Well, good morning. Barney Lipscomb here with Britt, with the Fort Worth Botanic Garden and with the Britt Press. And welcome everyone to the, what is this called?
Lunchtime lecture.
Lunchtime lecture. There we go. It is my pleasure to introduce a friend and colleague today. And his name is Dr. John James Pipoly. Well, what in the world? This is, I'm on time right now. John Pipoly, friend and colleague who formerly worked here at Britt, but let me introduce his formally here now. Originally from Detroit, Michigan, that says it all. Now I decided to use a one-page introduction here rather than his resume, which is I think 321 pages.
No, it's 52.
Oh,
It's not
okay.
long.
Originally from Detroit, Michigan, received his BS in botany from Michigan State University, which is where our librarian is this week with the Council on Botanical and Horticultural Libraries meeting. Did you know that, John?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
That was in 1978, and then his master's degree and PhD from the joint program at the City University of New York and the New York Botanical Garden in 1986. Now, I kind of know some of
Before
these
most
days.
people were born.
Yeah, after a postdoc at the Smithsonian, then US EPA and headquarters in the Superfund, he worked at the Missouri Botanical Garden, Shaw Gardens, I think it's called locally,
And locally, yeah.
where he supervised the florulas in Peru and Colombia while designing the sample strategy for permanent forest inventory plots across the Amazon. Subsequently, he came to Britt in 1994 to about 2000. He represented the United States side of the Philippine Plant Inventory, so he's been a part of our Philippine Plant Project. Co-founder of the Flora of Texas Consortium, which we got all the finally the Texas botanists in the state to come here
That's right.
to downtown 509 Pecan Street and to talk about the Texas flora. They haven't been together since.
Should have heard him.
Oh my goodness. Well, John devised new forest analyst models in Papua New Guinea, formulated the Colombian Western Andean Cordillera Forest Monitoring System. He then directed research at the research Britt and with the Philippines, Papua New Guinea, Colombia, Fairchild Tropical Gardens, where he worked at across the Caribbean and Colombia. He's very widely traveled. He was named the corresponding member of the Colombian Academy of Sciences. He is currently environmental project coordinator for Broward County Parks and Recreation Division, where he supervises pre-K and 12 stream environmental education relationships with universities, local, state, federal agencies, and grants. He also works with a local environmental education nonprofit, Youth Environmental Alliance, to present the Florida Master Naturalist Program as adult continuing education. His latest program is one to assist underserved students in Broward education service district through the neighborhood parks, where over 290 students have been empowered to raise their scientific grades from below C to B during sessions of once per week for 16 weeks. John uses voluntary interns, instructors who are undergrads and recent grads from Florida Atlantic University Biological Sciences Department to accomplish this program, and has groups of them assisting in development of more curriculum in English and Spanish. Today's program: effects of climate change on public health. Let me give you John Pipoly. John, come on.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Barney. Really nice. It's great to be back. Very emotional. Okay. One of the other things that's been really good about working with kids, the underserved kids, is I was able to, being from Detroit, I have no fear. So I walked into the Urban League. No one looks like me. And I just walked up and I said, I'd like to speak to the director of program. They said, who are you? I said, well, I'm from Broward County Parks. You know, Reverend Samuel Delabo is just there. The African American Research Library is next door to you, and they're the next one over. And we're working with kids from 33311 zip code, the largest food desert in the country. The dropout, the 9th grade dropout rate is at 2/3 right now. And I'd like to talk to them. So I talked to the program manager and I said, so I'm just wondering if you're going to do anything in education I know you do a thing with kids that are considering vocational or technical schools. She said, well, I think we're going to hire an educator. And I said, how about an environmental educator? They have to know the world around them. And a lot of the environmental topics are the ones that get them on the state exam, and then they don't pass. And if they don't pass, they end up at the car wash over here, or they end up, sometimes they don't even qualify to flip burgers, because now that's $20 an hour, right? So why don't we think about doing that? So they hired someone. She's going to write curriculum for the after school science review that we've been doing with 4th and 5th graders for middle school 6 to 8. And I just had 6 FAU students finish writing curriculum from grades 9 to 12. So I'll do pre-K to 3, and we'll have the whole package. I gave this talk at the League of Environmental Educators in Florida, and I gave away 600 of these jump drives with the whole curriculum on it. And they're all using them all over the state. It's great. So I'll have a whole package to give to Florida, and then I'll face west and mosey on over to Fort Worth. That's the idea. That's what we want. Okay. So first of all, I want all of you to know you're in the building where the herbarium is, if you don't already know that. And a herbarium, you have to have the new definition so you can communicate it to the common person. I want you all to promise me you're going to tell one neighbor what this is. A herbarium is a collection of photosynthetically challenged plants jumping with live data. Okay? Photosynthetically challenged plants jumping with live data. All right? Don't ever tolerate dead plant stuff. That we don't go for that. So I prepared this talk because I think the scientists that work for Broward County, the scientists that are in the universities, are missing the boat because they're not training the young doctors who don't even get tropical medicine in their training to help explain to the local population what is going on. Why do my kids go and walk at the edge of the woods and come back with huge blisters all over themselves? Well, it's because the carbon dioxide in the air is so concentrated, the plants are growing like as if they're on steroids. So because the urushiol, the oils that make the blisters and the itchiness are metabolites. Think of them as the plant sweat. The plants are going crazy, right? So because the plants are going crazy, one sec. Plants going crazy, their poison is going crazy. That's something to worry about. And it doesn't mean your kids are weenies and they're couch potatoes. It means that we live in a more toxic place. In the advert for this talk, we talked about the new hardiness zones from the USDA. So Google USDA hardiness 2023, and you'll see they've all moved up a lot. What is that? Zone 11 is the true subtropics. It means it'll never be below 40 degrees ever again, not even for a night. So what that means, all the iguanas are here. Chikungunya, dengue, malaria are also going to be around. Zika also. All these vector transmitted things. When I first got to Florida in 2000, I cut the lawn every 12 days. The lawn has to be cut every 6 now. That's how fast the plants are growing because of the concentrated CO2 in the air. So what's the solution for things like that? You have this garden here. Wouldn't it be great if you led a campaign to plant trees all over the city? The trees take out 6 toxins from the air. They sequester the carbon, and more importantly, they store it in their roots. All these oaks and plums you have in southwestern, near southwest Fort Lauderdale, over a 10-year period, they planted 15 million trees, and they're the first county in the country to lose their urban heat island. That means people's AC costs went down, the air is cleaner. If you have trees, you retain rain clouds, the good ones. So it's not like being in a desert where there's nothing and then it pours and you have erosion everywhere and everything floods and people die. No. The regular rain. So let's think about stuff like that. This is stuff all of us can do or help to do. Okay, so I give this talk to all the graduating doctors at the University of Miami, at Nova Southeastern University, and at Florida Atlantic University. That's now required for them. I gave them the talk so they can give it to them. I don't necessarily have to be the one. All right. So this is now our state bird because things have changed. When I first got to Florida, we had 4 species of mosquito. Now we have 80, of which 11 transmit disease. Serious thing. This is just general statements about climate change and what it does. Am I blocking you guys? No, it's good. Okay. All right. All these different kinds of things go on. Fossil fuels are really a big bugaboo. But it depends on where you are, what's going on with the sun and the atmosphere, whether you have 4 seasons and have ice and all that sort of thing. Another thing that's critical to know about, your weather forecast should always include the UV index. Where I live in South Florida, our UV index is 12 from June 1st to September 1st. That means a Caucasian arm in the sun produces 1st-degree burns in 15 minutes. That's what that means. It also means the nutrient cycling in the top layer of humus changes. It means the interactions of blue-green algae on the surface of ponds changes. It's stuff you got to know. I'm not saying it's doomsday. I'm just saying all our life growing up, people took a siesta from 12 to 2. There's a reason for that. They were in the tropics. There's no reason to be out in the sun. All my friends my age, I'm 68, so I'm a cough, certified old fart. They have skin cancer all over. Why? Because they wanted to be tan Fran and be out in the sun. And now they're paying the price. So are we going to let our kids play shirts and skins softball in the morning? No. I'm telling the schools, forget this recess at lunchtime, 12 to 2. Nobody should be outside. Have recess before lunch. Then they could sit down, calm down, and have a little lunch. Or some other arrangement, because after 2, they're out of school. So just be smart about it. You know, having lived and gone through a PhD, I had a whole lot of roommates going through all my collegiate experience, and it was all like the Big Bang Theory. Our apartment I was the plant nerd, there was a physics nerd, there was a medical nerd. Well, the guy that took over for Fauci's Tom Peterman. That's my old roommate. He's in charge of all the infectious diseases there are. Then another guy is at CDC, and he's the guy that's looking at skin cancer, big time. He goes, you have blisters twice, you're predisposed. It's going to take very little for you to end up with skin cancer, when particularly in your 70s. So if we know that now, if our generation is paying the cost, why don't we try to make sure that the young parents now know this stuff? It's important. We have all kinds of stuff going on in our environment all over. These biome shifts where these hardiness zones are coming northward. It's both sides of the tropics going like this. Okay? So pretty soon, northern Argentina, they're not going to get any more snow at all. Middle to South Australia. Not good. And they already have problems with fires from the middle of the zone that's just below where the ear is, you know, in the middle of the country. It's a problem. Bark beetle infestations. What happens with a lot of pines is you get an Ips beetle for the first 10 feet or 15 feet up. And then if the tree is weakened enough, an Ips beetle is about that big at the end of your finger, right? A bark blister beetle is this long. If the tree is weak enough, the bark blister beetles come and finish them off. All right. If there's too much heat and it's not cool enough at night, that's what happens to those trees. Increased woody growth in marshes, prairies, and pastures. You may say, yeah, so what? I love shrubs. Farmers that are growing wheat, oat, and rice don't like shrubs in the middle of their wheat. That's a problem. We don't as yet have agricultural engineering to the point where we have machines to take woody weeds out of drilled crops. We just don't. That's a problem. That's a huge problem. Forest mortality, we're finding out that because the plants are kind of outgrowing themselves, if you look at a tree and you see all these shoots going straight up, those are reiterations. They're repeating the whole architectural model. And what happens when they overgrow is they keep doing that, then the apex loses dominance, the tree's gone. Not good. Waterway fluctuations, nutrient function, and don't forget all these sociological things. FEMA 2 weeks ago came out and said, people who have had their houses replaced 3 times will not have them replaced no matter what anymore, period. So that means Alton, Illinois, they're telling them they're going to give them market wholesale value for their house and get out. Because the probability of them being flooded sometime in the next 6 months is 90%. They just can't do it anymore. If you live where it's going to get flooded, move away. Don't keep building in the same place. Did that make any sense? Okay, are the scariest things. Remember, when we talk about photosynthesis, we have the process during the day when we make the photosynthate, right? Then we have the Calvin-Benson cycle at night, where respiration takes place, and all those things that are made by photosynthesis are turned into other kinds of carbohydrates that end up being wood. All right? It used to be, when I was a young field botanist, I'd be in a rainforest and it's 5 o'clock and man, I'm sweating like mad because it's like 88 degrees. And at 6 o'clock, it was 65 degrees. When does the Calvin-Benson cycle run best? From 65 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. What's going on now in our rainforests around the world? I belong to this group. There's 300 of us folks, students, grand students, great grand students, etc. Oliver Phillips is the lead. He's in the biogeography department at the University of Leeds in the UK. We're finding out that the temperature is only coming down 5 degrees. So that means it's 80. So it's only doing a third. It's only burning a third of what it makes in the day. So what's going on? We don't know. Oh my God, they're not making the wood. The understory trees are not doing well. The overstory ones are doing well, but that's only because they still probably have another 60 years left before they croak or get hit by lightning or both or get harvested. That's bad news. Is there anything else we should know? Yeah. There's this enterprising group of people from Tokyo, from a Forest Institute of Technology that go around the world answering the impossible questions. And they went to where the rainforest network plots are in the middle of the Amazon and in the Peruvian Amazon. And they borrowed the dirigible, this thing that looks like one of those, anybody seen the funnel cakes at the fairs? You know what they look like? Or the big soft pretzels? Okay, this is a big rubber thing, comes down. And it has, places to stay and sleep and do research and walkways and everything in the canopy. And they're finding all these trees and emergence whose canopy leaves are 1/4 of an inch thick. That's unheard of. Tropical trees aren't succulent, but these are. And we think that's what the result of what's going on when respiration is not happening and wood's not being produced. They're sending all these nutrients to the top and they're getting all these succulent leaves. So there's 300 of us that are literally pulling our hair out. Of course, most of them don't have all that much hair to pull, but they're going crazy because we don't know what to do. So right now, there's currently money from the European Union, from the National Science Foundation, from the World Bank. There's about 90 people that are students that are being assigned to try to figure out what's going on. Because it's scary. Because if the understory isn't producing right, it's not going to survive. Something like 60% of the fauna lives in the understory, not in the canopy. The canopy and the emergence are where the raptors and all those sorts of things are, and some of the monkeys, et cetera. You can see a monkey highway across the top, right? So that's something to really worried about. And if that means that tropical forests are decreasing as carbon sinks, what do we have to look forward to? There's only one other choice. Does anybody know what it is? The massive phytoplankton congregations off the coast of Greenland and down at the Antarctic. They will soon be outproducing the rainforest if this keeps up for, I think if it's linear for 6 years, it could be. So this is like, I'm a little distant from the main action. I'm sort of the guy that's been there and done that, put in the plots, and I just sort of know what's going on and mechanisms of the forest and things, and I contribute where I can, and all these youngsters are doing all this great work. But that's what's happening. And you should know that. So it's a really serious thing. So planting millions of trees can really help anywhere. We're asking everybody in the world to do that. Okay. We now know that there's hyperdominance. I've spent 30 years of my career trying not to talk to ecologists, but I had to try to come up with some kind of algorithm to determine which is more important to save. A place that has 500 species per hectare, 10% of which are endemic or unique to there, or a place that has 250 species, 80% of which are endemic. Which is more important to the overall environmental health of the place? And that's even using, as Ed Wilson used to talk about, consilience, which is to consult all the different interested stakeholders, socioeconomic, you name it, the whole deal, to make a group decision, a consensus, which means no one is happy, sort of like Congress, to figure out what you're going to do, right? So that's stuff you should know. Okay. Same thing in the sea. It's exactly the same thing. The south tip of Florida just lost other coral reefs. They're dead. We don't know what we're going to do. University of Miami got a giant thing from the World Bank to take all their little artificial polyps and try to figure out a way to put them on top of what's the dead stuff, because the ocean is so acidic, it just ate everything, killed everything. Not good. An invasive species, the lionfish, was introduced from Asia, and it was in our tropical Caribbean waters. Now the lobster fishermen are getting stung by it at Cape Cod. Not good. All right. And this is what I show the doctors. You see this? You see these brown things here? These are the common shapes of the common melanomas. If your patients come to you and have that, you need to say something to them. I'm not saying you need to scare the pants off them, but you need to be aware of this, especially if you're practicing in South Florida, South Texas, Middle Texas, right? Important. Sea level rises. In a minute or two, we'll go by a picture of the people that were in Indonesia when what was it, 250 foot, 300 foot tsunami came in at 200 miles an hour, killed everybody, like 20,000, like that. That was from an earthquake in Japan. Got to watch about it. This is our lionfish that's so bad. These are these pythons that are all over. All of our friends that live in the suburbs of Broward County, which is on the east coast, and it has 2/3 of it's in conservation right up to the Everglades. All those people that live in those fancy houses in Coral Springs and Parkwood, they're scared in their boots because they go out in the backyard and there's a 30-foot python back there. And say, well, where is Jimmy, man? Where is he? And they're worried, And then, of course, we have tons of coyotes now. They seem to prefer poodles. I guess it cleans their teeth. I don't know. But the nice thing is they get rid of all the feral cats. It's just wonderful. Because our neighborhood has no birds. We have a cat lady with 51 cats, and she lets them out all day. So we don't have birds. All right. So we have direct physical consequences that I was just talking about. Beep. physical and chemical things, these biological things, all these vectors and diseases and stuff, sociodemographic. That means people that have to abandon their homes. 2, 3, 4, 5 generations. You know? See, think of some long-legged cowboys from Abilene that are going to have to give up their house because climate changed. How's that going to go over? It's the science people's duty to explain to the community how we can adapt how we live, make some slight changes, and still be around. That's the way to think. How can we modify what we do? Because what's out there is not going to change tomorrow. There is no repair. We can slow it down a lot by planting a lot of trees. We can be careful with the other things that we do. We can not throw all these little one-use plastic things in the water and get all those microplastics. So you're actually drinking it, you don't know. You know, it's already affecting people's kidneys in South Florida. The little microplastics in the water. You can't even see it. All right. Here's this giant tsunami. Look at the building there, the little 2-story building there. And this giant thing coming in. That's not a joke. That's for real. I don't want to depress you. I just want you to think it's time for us to drive in the center lane and not on the right anymore. Because the right's going to be gone. Right? That's all. Easy peasy. Photo degradation of a lot of things from UV. Saltwater intrusion. There are 3 cities in Broward County that no longer have wells for their water because the saltwater intrusion from below has come and filled them all. And once they have salt that can never be emptied, so they all have to buy all their water from Fort Lauderdale. So our water bill, what, about $60 a month? Yeah, they're paying about $140. I'm just saying, got to be smart. We have mangroves that are encroaching. All these canals that lead to the ocean. Everglades Restoration Plan. We're going to drain it all off. How are you going to drain it off if the ocean is taller than the canals? I'm working in these underprivileged parks, neighborhood parks. They're from 7 to 9 miles inland. They have mangroves in them. The canals that went out to the ocean are not coming in. And when the mangroves come in, they have a bacterium on their roots. And it's a symbiont with them. But if it gets on a bald cypress, it kills it. I'm talking 3 weeks. A bald cypress that's 5 feet in diameter, it's gone. It's going. All the shoot apices started losing their dominance and boom, 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 boom. Big deal. Not good when the sea is coming into you. Not cool. We have to figure out something about this. All right. This is the UV index I told you about. Alien species, because of increased CO2 concentration, they go crazy. They really do well. A lot of the nasty things you don't want to have. Some of these fungi, even fungi that get in your toenails and everything else. Stuff is not good. A lot of people don't know this. Currently, in the southern United States, each grass flower is estimated to have up to 50% more pollen grains per anther. What is that? What does that do for people with hay fever? Right? This is a serious thing. As I said to the medical doctors, this is a serious joke, man. You really have to learn some botany. All right? It's time. It's time. You got to quit talking about it. Let's just do it. Remember when we had the tornadoes down here and all the windows were blown out? And Ed Bass and Sid Richardson and the other Basses came, and then our little friend from Dallas, remember? The founder of EDS. Ross Perot. Yeah, nobody's gonna come here and do any business. Ain't no winters. We're gonna bring all the glass in, free for the small businesses, free for all the disabled veterans, no interest for all the businesses. Y'all got to get going. So they all put their money together and they did it. I had never seen anything like that in my life. You guys really care about each other. So that's why I'm telling you about this stuff. Poison ivy, look at that. That's South Florida poison ivy effect. And I had that in my family because her niece's husband, as a punishment for the kids, told them to take all the dead vines off the fence. They had no leaves. He didn't know they were poison ivy. Those two kids, they had to drink milkshakes for 3 days because they couldn't open their mouths. They had blisters everywhere. And they were shooting them up with antihistamines like mad. And of course, the one kid's heart rate was like 240 or something. It was bad. So we just have to think a little and be aware of our surroundings. And we should demand that our medical doctors get up with the tropical medicine and understand. It's not all that much, and it's not all that hard. And I'll give this talk to anybody that wants it. There's a bunch of stuff I'm not showing you. They have all kinds of like data curves and all kind of stuff that they can eat up. Here's something in Europe that we don't have yet. There's a thing called a Jimson weed that's in the West here. And it's got tropane alkaloids. Those are the things that really mess with your nervous system, okay? Like it's related to brugmansia and those other kinds of things, date rape drug, scopolamine and all that kind of stuff. In Europe, that's a terrible weed to begin with because their CO2 is so high. It's in their wheat fields. And they don't have a way to sort it out from the seeds of the wheat. And they have to figure that out because if people eat those seeds, they're going to be in a mess. It's a particular problem in Belgium right now and in Eastern France and a couple other places. And by the way, y'all know about what was the country that had the highest quality, largest volume of wine sales last year from Europe? Does anybody know? Take a guess. England. Because the hardiness zones have gone up so much, the most ideal climate for growing grapes is Southampton. Don't you know the French are just having a fit? Especially because it's the Brits with the limiest, according to them, the limiest of accents. The Cockneys and all of them, they have the best wine. Oh my God. So they're finally believing it over there. They're finally believing it. It's come home to roost. Okay, this is the same thing I was talking to you before about. You make the photosynthetic during the day and then you respire at night. And if the temperature is wrong, it won't work right. Okay, air pollution. This is this infectious disease thing. Avian influenza is a lot more easily transmitted if you don't have cold nights. Tick-borne diseases, waterborne, and this displacement stuff as well. Mental health and environmental refugees, that's with all these poor people. I think you got a serious case to think about over by Houston here. This is the third time these people have been hit in what, 4 years? So I bet the FEMA is going to come across and say, we can't help you, or we can only help you a certain amount, or only if you move. And that's not going to sit well, especially with people in Johnson County, because they've been on those ranches for what, 1830 or something. But you can't live in a place that's going to flood every year. There's just no way, unless you're going to do like they're doing in Key West. You have a special tax break if you put your house up on still 3 stories tall. And you put places to tie boats to the first floor. I think it's crazy, but people in Key West are known for being eccentric, we could say. All right. These are just some elements of what happens with increased air pollution due to climate change. And I'm not going to bore you with all the particulars, but things like black carbon, all kinds of stuff, ozone. See, remember, trees, every tree removes nitric oxide, nitric, sulfuric, ozone,
carbon monoxide, particulates from the air. There's another one, I can't think of it right now. Sorry. So every tree does its part. The more trees you have, the better off you are. And what's weird is among dicots, not among the, we all know there's 4 groups of flowering plants, right? Who doesn't know that? Don't be afraid. There's 4 groups. There's the primitive ones. The ones around here, it's going to be mostly the water lilies and their relatives. Then you have the magnolia relatives. They have flower parts in 3s or numerous, right? They mostly have tracheids. They don't have a lot of vessels. Or if they have vessels, they have funky plates at the end. So what happens is you get, because remember a vessel is like two Frappuccino straws put together, the big ones, and the water just smooths through. If they have the plates on them, then it slows the water down. And if they're a tracheid, they're closed. So the water has to go out, up, and in, out like that. That's why they never get to be really big trees. Okay. So you have dicots, monocots, magnolia relatives, and permanent plants. In dicots, especially, they're the ones that are removing all those compounds. So right here in the garden, these plums that you have and the oaks that you have, and if you look at the floor of Texas, the number of oaks you have around here. And when I worked downtown at the other Brit and Barney and I would walk and get coffee, I would count 9 species of holly around that are nice, small little trees. Hollies remove so much stuff from the air. It's incredible. And it's no big work to keep them fine. It's really worth it. So those are the kind of things I want y'all to think about. And with this pollen thing, like I told you, see, nitric, sulfur, black carbon, suspended particles, hydrocarbons, pollen and mold. You know. Now, this is one of these environmental things where you weigh what your possibilities are, what it costs you socioeconomically, what it costs you culturally, what it costs you environmentally, and let's come to a consensus so that no one will be happy, but we will have a solution. That's what this is all about. It's just a fancy dance thing. Now, so here's my plea. Watch the slides. We want you to work with your community to participate in the Climate Change Action Plan. That's mandatory, ordered by the federal government. Every community has one. If you don't know about it, go to your city, look it up. It will be there. Usually your county is in charge. Support parks for the star communities. That means that you're recycling when possible, you're using mulch, you're decreasing pesticides, you're decreasing unnecessary fertilizers, especially phosphorus, keeping that runoff away. You're using complete streets. You don't make medians that are 12 inches wide where you can't plant a tree or do anything. And they have to try to cut the lawn with that. Impossible. So then they lay all of these irrigation hoses to water the street over some little crummy shrub they have like this. Don't have complete streets. Look up complete streets. There's a whole huge things of how to design a street that gives back. And that makes it more pleasant for the people that live there and ameliorates the climate so they spend less money on air conditioning. And buffets the wind with a storm, right? Go solar where you can. These star energy programs, you can buy an electrodomestic that is star approved, all the better, if you can. Parks through their water conservation partnerships. This park conserves a lot of water. If you were to measure how much water can be harvested from the roofs of the buildings here, if you can estimate how much water is conserved because you have a canopy in the park, it attracts the clouds. It keeps you from turning into a desert. When I lived in Benbrook in 1994, we didn't have a single tree in our neighborhood. The only reason my grass didn't completely burn up is because on a dare, I got buffalo grass and planted it. Let it grow to 4 inches and said the hell with the mower. And it worked. I got away with it. Until the summer that we had 120 days over 100, and then it died. But otherwise, I was lucky. Pollinator conservation. There's nothing better than parks. So everywhere you go, you got to tell people, parks, parks, parks. Parks do it for everyone. And the lessons that we can learn for how a park is managed, we can apply to our communities and our homes. And we can do something about all these changes that are going on. And if you really think about it, what I'm telling you is you don't have to be scared. You don't have to run for dear life. You just have to modify your behavior a little bit. Don't go lay out in the sun. It's not smart. Anybody my age will tell you that, because we have brown spots all over us. I have freckles on my arm from the burns I got in the Huayna Highland of Venezuela. I know that I'm predisposed to skin cancer, and I've just got to watch myself all the time. I've never had it, thank God, but I got to watch. So that's that's me, and I'm at Broward County Parks. And I tell everyone that parks support environmental health, community health, and personal health. Even if you're like Barney that walks 5 miles a day in the garden. Look at how that's spring in that guy's step at his age. Are you kidding me? Bob too. Okay, good. Anybody have any questions? Thanks a lot. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to y'all. And it was just sheer coincidence that I'm at an environmental show at the convention center in Broward County. I met the dean of the medical school at Nova, and I told him I had this talk and could I give it? He says, "Yo, could you please?" So I did it there. He called Miami and he called FAU. He says, "You got to get this guy to give the talk." Because our doctors are, they're from Connecticut, they're from Washington State. They have no idea. And they're going to face these patients and they're going to have no idea what's going on. And if you think of it, especially, I'm the last resort for the Greater Miami Poison Control Center. And my territory is Key West to Jacksonville. So that's the whole east coast of Florida. The toxicity of everything in the potato family is off the chart now, because they're doing the metabolism thing too, right? Those are really deadly alkaloids. They're called tropane alkaloids. And there's stuff we just got to be careful with. You got to be careful what you put in your yard. I was telling Peter this morning, recently I had a case where they had a 3-year-old and a 1.5-year-old on life support. And there were parents that recently bought a house. And all across their backyard, they had these beautiful vines with all kinds of flowers. And they had this little fruit that looked like a tangerine. It was a strychnose with strychnine. Kids were on life support. The guy who owned the house previously was the American who was a civil engineer that built the Trans-Amazonian Highway. And he loved all the different species of strychnose because they were so pretty. And he smuggled them back and put them across over a period of 30 years. And then he went to the home, and his kids live in New York and don't care. And the real estate sold it to this family who innocently went there. Oh, they're not going to have anything toxic. They're selling us a house, right? And that's what happened. Luckily, there was no permanent damage, but it was one of those 2 a.m. texts with a phone call. Look at this. And I said, "Can you get somebody to go take a picture of where the branches are?" Because strychnose has little curved horns, That's what it was. So it's just, yeah. Yeah, that's so our listeners.
Your point about US physicians not knowing anything about tropical medicine is underlined today. One of the lead articles in the New York Times is entitled, "I'm a physician and was unprepared to what happened to me."
Yeah.
He got dengue.
Yeah. Oh, I've had dengue at least
So
3 times in the Philippines and 4 times in Colombia. Yeah.
So between not knowing anything about tropical diseases,
Yeah.
they also aren't taught much about nutrition. They
Yeah,
get
absolutely.
20 hours over 4 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, you know, if anybody
And
can get-
less in tropical medicine.
well, you know, the center for it, there's a place for it. And there actually is a little group at University of Texas at Houston. And of course, that's the group that did the first heart transplant, even before they did it in Johannesburg, right? They had the first like little mini one. And that's when I was a kid. Christian Barnard, I guess. And then he went over to South Africa and worked with your guys. But they're in a perfect place to do tropical medicine. I mean, they could change the face of Texas in no time. And these guys here could too, the UNT folks. There's a lot of really talented on the ball people that are also epidemiologists, which is really critical for how you figure about how to combat the diseases that these vectors are bringing to you, you know? Go ahead.
Did you know there are over 200 parks in Tarrant County?
Cool.
And that white-haired gentleman over there, Bob O'Kinnon, he's been in most of them.
Oh yeah, no, I know. I know Bob really well. I remember I was here from 94 to 2000.
We've been collecting fungi on the bark of living trees,
Oh yeah.
and they're there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Are you Harold?
Yeah.
Oh my God, Harold Keller. Harold Keller?
Yeah,
Oh my God, it's John.
I've been here a long time.
I did recognize you. I'm so sorry. You're all covered up. Okay. It's nice that that's why I said the UNT guys, man. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, see that's something that the garden here could collaborate with. I'd be happy to help any way I can, because this has been a big public thing. And in Broward County, where I am, the people that are most affected are the minority and underserved communities, because they don't necessarily have proper health insurance to go on a regular basis. And they have to wait until it's a emergency to have anybody see anything. And, you know, I always say these people are doing their practicums. Go to the neighborhood parks, the after school programs. You're going to have 70, 80, 90 kids at a crack. And the kids are so grateful that anyone cares about them at all. You could go and do all your practice right there. And the impact you'd have on the community would be gigantic. You know, so it's that kind of stuff that's little or no effort that can make such a difference. And then all of a sudden, the garden isn't seen as something for wealthy people to go and see their little flowers. It is something that helps us live. That's what you need. Right? And when the doctors see it as a resource so they can practice better medicine, then it takes on a whole new aspect. So that's what I really recommend that you think about. Okay. Anything else? Good. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity.